Taking Sides, Chapter 10. Lincoln now shut the front door, which the intruder had pried open, his breath white in the cold air. Flacco lay on the steps, paws pressed together. He blinked every time the hammer banged against the wood. I don't believe this. People are always trying to rip us off, Lincoln muttered as he stood back and examined the door. It looked broken. He went back in through the back door. He called his mother's office and got her answering machine. We're out of the office at the moment, but if you... Lincoln hung up. He didn't feel like talking to a machine, even if it spoke in his mother's voice. He wandered into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, looked around, and closed it without tearing into the plate of leftover chicken. He wasn't hungry. His heart had slowed, but he still felt wired. He bent a teaspoon in a U and threw it in the sink. He wished he could have caught the guy. Then he thought, no, he probably had a gun or a knife. Lincoln tried his mother's office one more time, and then he dressed, stuffed his gym clothes into his backpack, and started off to school limping. It was 11:45, and Monica would be waiting in the library. He pictured himself as Frankenstein, minus the stitches on the brow and the electrodes protruding from the neck. Lincoln had to laugh, but he winced when his foot came down awkwardly on a rock. He walked more carefully from then on. He looked around, anxious because he thought the guy might come back, but probably not. Lincoln had scared him. He saw a guy in jeans and a 49ers jacket get into a blue 66 Nova. Could that be him? Lincoln's mind went wild. He memorized the car's license plate, and the car drove away, scattering leaves. But Lincoln reasoned. No thief would stick around the scene of the crime, especially in Sycamore. He stopped at the 7-Eleven for a pack of gum and a soda, which he drank standing near the trash can outside the store. A car pulled up and a guy got out. Lincoln wondered if it might be the thief, but the guy was wearing jeans with the knees ripped out, and the thief's jeans had been new. He looked at his watch, 11:55. Lincoln gulped the remainder of the soda and hurried off. At school, he handed his mother's note to the secretary in the office. The principal, Mr. Kimball, was hiking up his pants as he walked past Lincoln. We're gonna beat Franklin, right, Mr. Mendoza? Yeah, Lincoln said without much energy. He didn't feel like talking basketball. Come on, where's the spirit? The principal asked as he disappeared through the doorway. Now that it was lunch period, students were beginning to fill the hallway. Lincoln thanked the secretary for his pink admittance slip and walked over to the library. Monica was at a table, biting into her apple furtively because no food was allowed in the library. As he approached her, she looked up, her face pink and happy. She beat her pencil against the tabletop. How's the knee? I'm really sorry that I tripped you. You didn't trip me. I scrubbed. He took a seat, heaving his backpack into the empty chair next to him. He wanted to tell her about the break-in at his house, but he didn't know how. He looked up at the clock. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see the librarian at her desk, a sweater draped around her shoulders. He took off his sweater and said, It's warm in here. Is anything wrong? Monica asked, pushing her books away. She looked at him with concern. Your knee isn't that bad, is it? It's bad. But that's not the problem. What is it then? Lincoln looked back at the clock. I don't want to talk about it. Come on, Link, she urged cheerfully. He noticed her blush was brighter on one cheek than the other. I said I don't want to talk about it, he snapped. Monica's smile flattened into a line. Lincoln tried to hold her hand, but she pulled away. He felt lousy. His knee was busted, his house nearly ripped off, and Tony was no longer his carnal. And now Monica was mad. Lincoln got up, faked a smile, and gathered his sweater and backpack and said, I have homework to do. I'll see you later. He turned around and walked out of the library. He knew it was stupid to get up and leave her. Now she would think he was a jerk. But he couldn't help himself. He returned to the administration building where the secretary was eating popcorn and reading a magazine. It was her lunchtime. Lincoln hesitated to bother her. Mrs. Diggers, can I use the phone? He wanted to try again to tell his mother about the break-in. She turned some pages from her magazine and, without looking upset, no, you know the rule. The rule was that you couldn't use the phone unless you had a broken leg, broken glasses, or generally were close to death. Last year, one of the kids, feigning sickness, used the phone to order a pizza. The principal and the secretary had to help pay for the pizza when it arrived. That was the last straw. Lincoln left without pestering her. He put down his backpack and put on his sweater. The sky was once again gray as slate. For the remainder of the lunch period, Lincoln sat on a cement bench, sharpening a popsicle stick into a wooden knife and thinking of Tony and tomorrow's basketball game. He could picture Tony running up and down the court and Coach Ramos clapping his hands and telling his players to play tough. When the bell sounded, Lincoln went to geography, where he sat down to a multiple-choice quiz, 30 questions he thought were a cinch. He rolled his pencil between his palms, feeling smart. He had been reading about Egypt for longer than he could remember. After geography, he went to science and learned for the first time that the earth revolved around the sun. He had always thought it was the other way around. He had a lot of questions regarding science. He wondered, for one, how rivers could run uphill, and why clouds could float when they were weighted down with gallons of water. But the questions were hard to ask. The bell sent students out the doors to mingle and talk in the halls before the next class. Lincoln rose slowly. When he heaved his backpack onto his shoulder, his Air Jordans kicked him in the jaw. He slapped his backpack and hobbled to the door. On his way to English, he saw Monica in the hallway looking worried, biting a red fingernail. She called out, "Lincoln, I want to talk to you." But he ignored her and hurried off, a spark of pain in his knee. When he turned around to see if she was following him, she wasn't there. English was his last class before practice. Lincoln walked slowly to the gym. He found Coach Soto shooting hoop by himself, his face already sweaty, his gray sweat sagging on his large, dumpy body. He shot from 10 feet out and missed. Coach turned around when he heard footsteps. "Get dressed, Mendoza." The janitor was running a dust mop across the gym floor, which gleamed and smelt of new polish. The overhead heater was blowing warm, dusty air. "Coach, I gotta talk to you," Lincoln said, letting his backpack slide onto the floor. He remembered Roy's story about playing ball with Yacetis. For the first time, Lincoln realized the 1970 championship banner at Franklin was from the year Coach Yacetis had opened his mouth at Frankie Pineda and smacked him for running down Mexicans. It was the year Franklin won the Peninsula Championship and Columbus was runner-up. Coach Yacetis, dribbling the ball from his left hand to his right, moved in on a slow layup, one that a third grader could make. "What is it?" "I hurt my knee. It's pretty bad." Coach tucked the ball under his arm and commanded, "Get dressed. You don't have time to be hurt." "It's serious." Lincoln rolled up his pant leg. "Check it out." Coach didn't bother to look. Instead, he moved to another hoop. When the janitor came to sweep the court, he was on. Coach yelled, "Come on. Don't be a crybaby. Get dressed, Mendoza." Crybaby, Lincoln thought. I know more about you than you think. James and Durkins came in with Grady. They were eating candy bars and licking flakes of potato chips from their fingers. "Hey, Link," James shouted. Lincoln waved at them, forcing a smile. They all went into the locker room where Lincoln sat on a bench, his head in his hands. He didn't know what to do. If he left, Coach would accuse him of not sucking it up in a tough moment. If he stayed, he could hurt his knee even worse. Lincoln punched the locker and turned the combination. He got dressed and went out to the court, trying not to limp. He took a basketball from a canvas army bag and dribbled the ball, testing his knee. Under the overhead lights, the knee looked more purple than ever. Then Lincoln remembered his mother. He tossed the ball to Grady and went into Coach's office to use the telephone. He dialed quickly because he didn't want Coach to come in and yell at him for using the phone without asking. On the fourth ring, he got his mother. "Mom, bad news. Our house was broken into." "¿Qué?" she screamed. "Espérame un momento. Wait a minute." She put him on hold and then returned. "Nuestra casa? Our house?" "Yeah. Some guy broke open the door. I nailed it shut, so you have to use the back door." "What were you doing? Were you in the house?" Embarrassed, he told her he'd been asleep. Lincoln looked up at the clock. It was 3:42. "Mom, I gotta go." "Where are you right now?" "At school, at practice. I want you to meet me at home right away." Lincoln looked down at Coach's desk. He saw the lineup for the Franklin game, and he was among the starters. He looked up and saw a photograph of Yacetis standing with Chris Mullins. Yacetis was grinning like a fool. "I can't, Mom. I'm practicing. You better come," she said threateningly. "Did he hurt you?" "No, I'm all right. But I threw your coffee cup at him and broke it." "Did you get him?" "No, I missed the vato." "Did you call the police?" Lincoln hadn't thought to call the police. In his old neighborhood, you called the police only when someone was either run over or mugged or killed. "No, I didn't call them. Mom, I'll be home as soon as I finish practice." He hung up without saying goodbye and returned to the gym where he took shots and tried to run through the offenses without limping. But his knee was throbbing him, and after 20 minutes of practice, he sat down without permission. Coach Acetis stared at him angrily. Lincoln rubbed his swollen knee and ran a towel across his face while he watched his teammates run through drills. When practice was over, Coach pointed at Lincoln and said, "Mendoza, you're not playing tomorrow. You don't know how to hang." Lincoln looked up. "It's fine with me. Franklin's gonna win, like in 70. "What are you talking about?" "You know, when you played." "What do you mean?" "Hombre, you know what I mean." Coach wet his lips, studying Lincoln, who wouldn't look away. The gym went still. The heater clicked off, and the breathing of sweaty players quieted. Muttering, the coach turned away, draped a towel over his shoulder, and went into his office. The other players, with towels and basketballs in their arms, walked past Lincoln. They didn't know what to say to him. Lincoln remained slouched on the bench, a chill creeping up his back now that the sweat had dried. He was the last to shower. When James asked if Lincoln wanted to walk home with him, Lincoln waved him off without looking at him. He wanted to be alone. He sat in the locker room, watching shadows creep across the cement floor. Then he limped home in the dark.